That being said, I think turnabout being fair play after Craig did such a wonderful job last week, asking for information about all of us, that I'm going to come up with some questions off the cuff, and we're going to do our best to answer, and Craig can then confirm how right we might possibly be. So the first one, a simple factoid you think a person could find is, where did Craig go to college, undergrad? Where did he get his bachelor's degree officially from? We've got some USC, we've got Silo Tech. Go with that. Penn State, you know, was he over in Springfield? Dakota State. Okay, we got some guesses. Craig, where'd you get your bachelor's degree?
SDSU.
No wonder why he's so anonymous. Okay, this is going to get real dicey real fast. All right, how about then another simple question one thing you would be able to find out is, where then did he receive his law degree? We got some USDs, okay.
USD!
Atta kid. Thank goodness. Okay, another factoid that I'd always like to try to find is how connected to our community are people. So how long has Craig Thompson been a Vermillionaire? Vermillionite? Did we ever land that debate? Vermillionaire? No, see, no, I'm sorry. How long has Craig lived in Vermillion?
40 years.
We got a 40 years? 42 years?
35.
35 years. Should we do prices right? You got to be, you know, can't go over. 45? Okay. Craig, how long have you lived in Vermillion?
43, but when you're in law school, it doesn't seem like you're in Vermillion, so 40 years practicing law, 43 living here.
You stole my next question. How many years? Well, here's an easy one. How many years has Craig been practicing law? 40 years. All right. How long has Mr. Thompson been in private practice practicing law of those 40 years? We got 40, all of them? We got 32?
27.
27? Okay, how many years have we been practicing privately?
40, but I think some people thought when I was state's attorney that didn't count, but when Art Rush served as state's attorney and when I served as state's attorney, we could both have a private practice. Today, in most counties, probably 60 out of 62 counties, the prosecutor can only practice the criminal law and can't have a private practice. So, in my eyes, we were fortunate to be able to do both at the same time. So, 40 years.
40 years, very good. All right, so then how many years was Mr. Thompson a state's attorney?
12.
2. We're all even numbers, 10, 12, 2. I think I heard 8. And how many years was that?
12.
12.
They're 4-year terms.
Very good. Okay, so any other questions you think we need to throw out at him before he gets a chance to do his thing? All right, I think that's good. Find yourself what you feel is appropriate. I don't have good numbers. If you know Craig real well, I guess nothing. If you had to guess at some of those questions, you know, throw a buck or two on the table. That would be great. So truthfully, what I was able to find while researching our presenter today, so we're going to hear from Craig Thompson, Esquire, and we're going to hear about death cleaning, reducing the clutter. And I think we've heard this similar before, and you do a great job of reminding us. But here's what I could find. Granted, it was only about 30 minutes of diligence, but usually that's more than enough. Craig Thompson is a trial lawyer in Vermillion, South Dakota with 40 years of experience. Craig is a general practice attorney with special interest in personal injury, litigation, criminal defense, corporate and business, divorce and family law, estate planning, wills, trusts, probate, and real estate. And though he is, and then my note was, that was all I found about him. And then something about, if you want a man on your side, call Craig Thompson. Was that the slogan, something like that? Never, okay, close to that. So then my note, and though he's talking to us today about death cleaning and reducing clutter, he sure should give a presentation about how to be anonymous on the internet. So please, roll a round of applause for fellow Rotarian, Craig Thompson.
So when you were told of what different types of law I practice, it's basically everything but bankruptcy. So, and in a small town, you'll find that. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess. So this is, if James would put up the first page, it's a presentation that I started to make like to PEO groups, and I've kind of tried to broaden it a little bit today, but I thought I had to have something fancy, so I decided to call it "Dustadning," which is Swedish for death cleaning, and then broaden it to decluttering your home or your life. So this is hopefully more legal, but I can tell you from moving twice while our house was being built that we didn't learn our lesson the first time. We didn't purge very well. And so thank God we sold our house right away, our old house. We had to move into a rental. So we had 2 chances to purge, and it took 2 chances to finally purge and get rid of things we didn't need. But if you save things for your kids, generally, I can tell you by the time you get to that stage, they don't want that stuff. So you might as well get rid of it. So we learned that lesson too. So anyway, this is just a way to get attention for the topic. And that's hopefully a copyright-free picture, it's supposed to be. So I did have a lady with a broom, and I don't know if that's copyright-free, so I decided to change that. But let's go to the second page, James. So this is something I give my will clients, and we'll just kind of go through it slow. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but when we complete a will, we try to stress to the client how important it is to know what you have and know where it is, and then so you can make sure someone else knows where it is. So as we all sit here today, hopefully we all feel really well. And but if you would think back to the last time you were sick or not feeling very well or recovering from surgery, the last thing you really want to do is organize your financial documents or your wills and powers of attorneys and whatnot, or try to tell people where things are. You're not going to feel like it because you don't feel like you do right now. So you do things, just like when you purchase insurance, you do things when you don't need them so that they're there when you do need them. But it's not that your wife or your husband can find something, but it's after they're both gone, can the kids or other relatives find those things. So I find this to be vitally important. A lot of these things I don't have. Military discharge papers, I just leave that box empty. Some clients take this and revamp it to their own purposes. They might add 7, 8, 9. So like 5 could be the accountant's office, 6 could be broker's office, 7 could be whatever, and they can make up their own little graph. But it's just important to take an inventory and then to relate that information to someone that you hope will be around. Now I've taken something similar and I put it on a disk drive and or flash drive, but I have the same problem my clients do. I have to make sure someone finds that flash drive. So where I put that, if it's on hard copy or if it's on a flash drive, wherever I put that, I need to make sure someone can find it, or it's pretty much for naught. But I like to do the flash drive and go a little broader and explain things, or even say what bank account numbers are and things like that, so that people don't have to fish for them, because we'll get calls. Did my mom have a will with you? Did my dad have a will? We're calling all the law offices trying to find out if they had a will. Or do you know if my mom and dad had a power of attorney? Or do you know where my mom and dad banked? So just doing things like this and giving it to your loved ones can be, I think, especially helpful. So if we can go, well, let's talk about this right here. I don't use this, but Legacy Locker and Secure Safe, that can also store equipment, and apparently they securely encrypt it, you know, for passwords, which we'll get to, I guess. Let's go to the second page, James. This is just a little bit, that's page 3. Can you go back to page 2? Yeah, there we go. Okay, maybe that was, okay, page 1, page 2, sorry. So that's basically the items, and you can add to it or subtract from it and whatever you want to do. Now you can go to page 3, James, sorry. So page 3, I usually tell my clients that, you know, 2 things. You don't want to even maybe give your son or daughter or children your websites, your user ID, and your password, because you don't want them going into your brokerage account or whatever, even though you may be very transparent with them. So what I suggest to my clients is that they make a master, so it'd be the 3 pages, the first 2 and then this page. That's a master, and they put it in a certain place in their home or wherever. Then they give their children the first 2 pages, and we'll call that the general one, and then say where the master can be found. And the master could, be as much as like my flash drive, or it could be just this, but passwords change all the time too. So that may not be that helpful, but at least if they have the ID and they know you had an account or on a certain website, they can at least go to that. And nowadays we have digital personal representatives. So when someone dies, the person who sees through the probate process or takes care of the property, it was known as an executor. Now they're known as a personal representative. And now we have digital personal representatives that can be named in wills. And if you're not a digital personal representative, your loved ones, your surviving heirs may have a hard time finding your getting into your website or using your user ID. So you'd want to either have them have the password or have them be labeled digital executor, digital personal representative. So again, just leaving important information that you think your loved ones should know about so they don't have to go on that fishing expedition. Let's go to the 3rd page, or next one. Okay, this is a book I really like, put out by ARP, and it's a whole book. It's not that thick, but it's a paperback. But I took 3 things out of it, some checklists, and it's just to get you thinking. So one part of this is, oh yeah, okay, I don't have that life insurance policy anymore, but I do have this one. Oh yeah, who are my beneficiaries? Oh, and where do I keep that policy? So there's so many things, and they kind of sometimes build on top of each other. But if you go to the next page, James. So these are 2 of the pages that I like, the checklist. So again, this is just to get you thinking and suggestions of the different categories, whether it's personal history, family history, insurance, banking, saving, retirement, veterans benefits, investments, real estate. I'll leave that up there a minute. You can read that for yourselves. For one thing, it talks about burial plans and things like that. Some people want to put their burial plans in their will. And of course, we can put it in there, but usually the person is buried before the will is found. So putting that in the will doesn't do a lot of good. You'd want to have the burial instructions given to your funeral director or loved ones or whatever. So that's just one example of different things that we all need to think about. Anyway, that's self-explanatory. Again, it's just to get you thinking. Let's go to the next page, James. So here's the last page that I liked. It was in the medical and final wishes, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, other assets and debts. So I'm not here today to talk about wills because that could be a presentation all by itself, but I'll just share this one more story. Just finished a probate where a young man didn't have a will, and that's not entirely true. He did have a will, but it was made a long time ago. Then his heirs at that time, he never had a wife or children or whatever, but his heirs were his mom and dad, who were alive when he made his will. But when he died unexpectedly, at that time, his parents had already predeceased him. So basically, he died in what we call intestate succession. Now we go by state statute. And so it was horrible. We had to find it was either 61 or 63 heirs all across the nation, 63 people, some of which my clients could help find or identify and get addresses for, and some that we had to really fish and try to find. But there were cousins, second cousins, third cousins that had never met the decedent, And it's probably a good thing for them. Later, the end result is, because he was a bachelor, it was a good estate. They get a check that they probably never expected, so that's a good news for them. But I highly doubt that that individual would have left assets to all those relatives, 63 relatives and second, third cousins. And also, it wasn't like all 63 got the same amount. It varied. So if one person got 90,000, another person might have gotten 1,700. One got 23,000. So it varied. And how, what if he was closer to the one that got 1,700 and didn't even know the one that got 93,000? So it's a way to control, where your assets go. So it's unfortunate. And you'd think that there were a lot more war stories like that, but fortunately, knock on wood, it doesn't happen that often, but you don't want to be the one that it happens to, I would say, based on just that example. So I'll just share that. Let's go to the next page, James. So I just put this together. This is actually something new, and we talk about, well, let's declutter then. Let's get rid of stuff. Well, how about legal stuff? How about tax returns? So, and this is just generally, but the IRS has 3 years from the date you filed to audit your return. Some experts want you to keep it for 4 years, and your own accountant and stuff may decide longer or agree with this. The IRS has 6 years from the date you file your return to audit you if you underreport your income by more than 25%. So you keep things 6 years, 3 years, 4 years, but probably safe that you wouldn't have to keep something 7 years out. You can make your own decisions, of course, and talk to your accountant. But that might be one way to look at it. You may need W-2s for at least 3 years if you were going to buy a home, that they may be required. Also, you should keep your stock and mutual funds statements for at least 4 years. After selling an investment, you'll need to report the purchase date and price when you file your taxes for the year an investment is sold to establish your cost basis. A lot of brokerage persons will be able to help you with that, but some maybe can't or don't. You might need to have that stuff, so that's another barometer to maybe follow is a 4-year rule for that. Or you can archive them, a lot of, and we'll get to that, but some financial institutions, I guess it's the next thing. Charles Schwab keeps 10 years of archived brokerage statements. Well, that's a long time, but is it long enough? I don't know. Fidelity, 7 years. So, or 10 years for some things, 7 years for 1099s. Any record keeping your brokerage firm provides will probably disappear if you decide to switch to another institution, so if you changed over. Before closing an account, you should download your archived statements and any other documents connected to that account. Scanners are becoming so easy to use, and you can scan your documents. You can go further than all these different lengths of time and just have it on your computer. Then they have things like Google Drive, iCloud storage, or Dropbox, just as ways to also keep those documents if you want to go back further than those different years. And I got this from Kiplinger's Personal Finance just in April of 2022 here. So again, that's just general guidelines. And then I think that's the end of the presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer some questions if you have any. Yes?
You mentioned that some things shouldn't necessarily be in the will. I would assume one of those would be your healthcare power of attorney.
Right. Yeah. Yep, definitely separate documents. I used to combine my healthcare powers of attorney with my, what I like to call financial power of attorney. The real word is durable power of attorney. Durable means it withstands disability. So we have durable powers of attorney, financial, primarily we have these two, healthcare power of attorney. So I would combine those to try to make it more simple and save money. And then I started thinking, oh no, that's not good, because if you go to sell a house or buy a house, whatever, you may need to have that power of attorney recorded with the Register of Deeds, and then that becomes total public record, and then all your life and death choices, not that you may care, but you may care, are now public records. So I decided, no, that's not a good thing to combine them. And so I do those separate, documents. So yeah, the will's separate, trust is separate, healthcare power of attorney separate, durable power of attorney separate. So, I do some powers of attorney for daycare providers, or if someone's leaving the country for a while and they have their car for sale, you can give a limited power of attorney to the neighbor or to someone or to the daycare person to seek medical care. So it can be limited. You can limit it in time or in scope. So, keep all those things separate, but go and take an inventory and get rid of or scan the things you don't need. And yes?
As you look around this room, it looks like there's a lot of people who use some of the advice that you've given. And I know we have just been thinking last year or two, physically, all our physical things, our furniture, our stuff in storage, stuff that we haven't used in years. What do we do with it? Our kids live a long distance away from us. Give it away, do you try to sell it? I mean, it's mind-boggling. And moving, you talk about having to move, you have to purge yourself of things. When you get to be as old as we are in our late 70s, what are we going to do with all this stuff?
It's when someone dies and there's a probate, we'll put a category on what's called the inventory, what the person died owning, and what the date of death value of it was. But for furniture, you're not going to get any money for it, so sometimes it might be zero. Sometimes you might just group it together and say all household goods and furniture, $500. I mean, you're not going to get money for it, like couches and chairs and things like that. No one wants them. So, but you can, a bigger estate would have an auction, Ralph, and sometimes the auctioneers will join, the auction with 4 other estates or 4 other people wanting to sell things, and they can get rid of things. So, like Gary Madsen does that, and he's here in town. And
Think of all your tools.
Yeah. Right. And the other thing is, will the people find those things? Where are you storing that stuff? Will they find it? So, yes.
A partial answer to what Ralph's question was, in my own personal life, my wife likes to keep everything, and I keep telling her that, Mary, when we die, that Jared's just going to bring a big dumpster up, and it's all going into the dumpster.
Yeah. And there are people that have a lot of things they've saved over time, and that's exactly what happens. Sometimes you can't even walk in the house. So the executor or the personal representative has to be able to get into the house and get through the house, and sometimes it's impossible. So, and they use that dumpster, or they get the person or the auctioneer involved right away and get that stuff out of there. So.
We've watched too much the Antique Roadshow.
Yeah.
The stuff we have is valuable.
Yes. Might be some of it, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about an individual being a personal representative versus getting a trust company to do that? Because there are times when it makes sense to have a trust company, because it may be just too much for an individual, or there may be issues within a family that cause you not to want to have one family member be the executive. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So in my practice, what I've seen over all the years is usually you have a person as the personal representative if it's a will, and usually you still have a person if it's a trust. But in a trust, you're more likely to consider what we call an institutional trustee. And when that happens, that's because of, like what Susan just said, maybe people don't get along, or you don't want to put a certain relative on the hot seat and have to be the referee and determining person, but, financial institutions are handy, and the fee may have gone down a tiny bit, but generally it's just barely under 1% of the gross estate of the trust per year annually. So in some regards, that's a lot. In some regards, it's not a lot for what they do. And if they're on the hot seat and they're taking all the fire, and you want that commercial or institutional trustee to be doing that, then that's perfect. So yeah, you can use an institutional trustee like a bank or trust department, things like that. Jim?
Question. Full disclosure, he's been our personal attorney for about 10 years now. Did our will since I younger. The one we just learned when we redid it was the digital power of attorney. Maybe explain that to people.
Yeah.
I think that's bad for attorney.
Yeah, I mean, you may never need it, but what's it hurt to put one more clause in your will, a couple lines, paragraphs, whatever, then if you need it, it's there. And that digital PR might be the same as your PR, your personal representative of the will, or they might be two different people. One person might be better with your social media and all the digital things, and this person might be better with money, or better with relations and dealing with all the heirs and dealing with the attorney. So they can be the same person, they can be different people. Yes?
Just to piggyback on that, as many of you probably do have Facebook, as someone who lost a parent but had a Facebook account, you have an ability to set who can take that over if you pass, and that's really important, because if you don't, this has happened to a lot of people that are my age whose parents have passed, their deceased parents' account is hacked or used, and things are posted to it, or messages are sent from it, and so not only is it, just annoying, but it's pretty traumatic to receive messages from your deceased parent. So that's a really simple and easy thing that you can do for your children and loved ones. It's just like under some of your settings, to just set that person that all they have to do is be able to send it a death certificate scanline to Facebook, and then they can take over the account and they can turn it into what's called a legacy account, and then it can no longer be used. So that's just from personal experience, it's something small that you can do for your kiddos.
Yeah, so that's an alternative, and I think that's Facebook, but I think Google does that and one other, but they don't all do that, so you might still be safe to do both what she suggested and still have that in your will. Again, that much more of the writing isn't going to add to the cost. And I'm not here to sell wills, but when I do wills, I do them at a flat fee. It doesn't matter how long we talk about it, how many revisions we do, or how long it takes to execute it. It's just a flat fee. So you're not adding to the cost by adding a paragraph. Someone else had their hand up? You, okay?
Talking about someone who died intestate, right? But he was a bachelor, you said. So what if the person's married and has kids? Is it the same thing, or?
No, then the wife and the children would have preference over those other relatives. But yeah, so the state statute, but it still goes state statute. So the wife is going to inherit if the wife and the husband had children together. She'll get everything. But if he had children from before, then it gets awkward. The wife only gets the first $100,000, and then 50% of everything above that. Well, the husband may not have, or the wife, whichever might be the case, maybe didn't intend that. So again, an unintended consequence. We're good? Yes, sir.
I'll use myself as an example. We have a lot of musical instruments, and we give them to, in this case, the museum. So who after they see that, who does it? Is that the personal representative or the executive would have the responsibility to say
Right, yes. And
okay.
you'd either specify that in your will, we call that a specific bequest, or you might have it generally in your will, or your PR would do that as a matter of course. But if it isn't in writing, it may not get carried out. So I would make that a specific bequest. Then it has to be done.
And to go on from that, can we simply say musical instruments? Or should we list every single, we have a couple hundred.
If you're going to give all of them to the museum, then you could just say all of my musical instruments.
And
If you're
somebody else
going to
figure out what
give-
it is.
What's that?
Well, most people wouldn't know what a didgeridoo is. It's a piece of wood with a hole in it. So,
But I mean, if you were going to spread it out, say give some relatives a certain instrument and so on, and then give the rest to the museum, you've got to specify what they are. Yeah. So when we give personal property, we say bequeath, it's a bequest. When we give real estate, we devise it. So we give, devise, and bequeath all of our property to Rich. You know, that's if he was the sole heir, just be that simple. We give everything to Rich. And if he doesn't survive me, I give it to Art Rush. You know, so, and so on. You have to cover contingencies. So if Rich doesn't survive the testator, who's going to take after that? Or if the museum's out of business, who gets those instruments? Then are they going to be sold? And then the money's shared between your heirs? Yes, Ray?
No, I was just gonna say, you said Rich and Art, and I figured out what's next.
Oh, well, yeah, you definitely are. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Craig. That was a great presentation, and I hope you continue doing it for our crowd every year. It is a nice reminder. Next week is Mr. John Prescott. I'm pointing like he's there, but he ghosted us already. John Prescott and I must have typed this wrong. I think Joni Livingston would be right. Talk about benefits of public power. So that's next week. We'll be here next week. Now, I've told you I would start reminding you that we're not here at some point soon. Next week here, 29th, we're across campus in Dalzell. Okay? And was it room 107? 110. Okay, Dalzell 110. Same arrangement with parking. By all means, go park at the Dalzell parking lot. You don't have to worry about any ticketing or anything like that. So that's the 29th. 22nd, here. So you get one more reminder from me that will be across campus. I want to say thank you to our guest. I tried to write these phonetically, so hopefully I have it right. Basima, is that right? Just Bess. Bess, thank you. Bess. Knock it off, Kelsey. Bess and Emmanuel. Ray, good to see you. Tony, thank you for being here. 50-50 drawing.